Brand new year, same situation. Baldur's Gate 3 is completely forgotten. Elden Ring's DLC is going to come and go. And Nintendo is just going to dominate this year just like they've dominated every year since 1981, right? The reality is the rest of the gaming industry can't compete. I find it hilarious how PC gamers are bleeding on about the end of PlayStation and Xbox. The end of Sony and Microsoft's consoles without really taking into account that that's just going to create a monopoly for Nintendo hardware, right? PC gamers aren't aware that Nintendo is dominating the hardware space. They don't care. They don't understand that 2024 is loaded with incredible titles. You know, the re-release of the Apollo Justice trilogy, Unicorn Overlord, Princess Peach Showtime, a new Under Night game is coming out. We got Mario versus Donkey Kong, right? We have Luigi's Mansion 2, right? Luigi's Mansion 2 by itself, a re-release of a decade-old game is probably gonna outsell your favorite game next year, right? It is undeniable that Nintendo is dominating in 2024. And it feels like going into this year, seeing the momentum that the Game of the Year, Tears of the Kingdom, and the runner-up, Super Mario Bros. Wonder, have generated on the console industry, seeing how Nintendo's stock prices are higher than they were during the peak of the Wii years, it does feel like this year is going to be the year where the Nintendo Switch, finally eclipses the PlayStation 2 in sales. And it will mark the end of this narrative that's been perpetuated by evil, corrupt, Japanese American businessmen, Sony, that Nintendo is a company that's on the decline, that they're on the way out, that they can't compete with Xbox, with PC, with mobile. Like, every year we have to deal with this nonsense. They're like, oh, Nintendo is on the way out. Oh, the Super Mario Bros. Movie wasn't good. Oh, it wasn't the best game adaptation this year. Oh, like, Tears of the Kingdom wasn't great. Oh, nobody cares about Mario Wonder. They didn't market it at all. It didn't sell all that well. Like, at this stage, you are simply denying reality. And to a certain extent, that's always been true. Always been true. But, like, it's really getting to the point where it's really difficult to even view Microsoft or Sony as competitors. Seeing people try and put Spider-Man 2 or God of War Ragnarok up against, like, Tears of the Kingdom and Super Mario Bros. Wonder is laughable. And the attempts at downplaying Nintendo titles, like games like Fire Emblem Engage, they are failing quite a bit more than they used to. Like, I've ragged about the way Fire Emblem Engage was received when it's actually a pretty solid Fire Emblem game. Like, I've ragged about the controversies about it. I've seen people say, like, failed. But the reality is that the IP is still going strong. The game did reasonably well, and, like, the series is going to continue, right? Like, the game is not a failure by any stretch of the imagination, but you definitely have a bunch of people saying it is. You have a bunch of people, like, creating this narrative that it failed, but it's not going to stick. And that's kind of the reality of what we've been seeing over the past couple of years with Nintendo Switch, is that the narratives don't stick. Right? The industry was desperate for Nintendo to announce the Switch 2 last year so they could write it off, so they could say, like, oh, it didn't outsell the PS2, it's a failure. They were desperate for that. They were desperate for this farce to continue, so, like, developers could put out titles for the real consoles, the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5. But instead, what happens? The biggest game of 2023, Hogwarts Legacy, mysteriously gets ported on Nintendo Switch with no issues, right? Mortal Kombat 1 comes out on Nintendo Switch with no issues. Like, you see these developers who have bent over backwards trying to delude you into thinking that, like, oh, Nintendo Switch can't run those games. But in reality, they don't want to do it because they want you to buy the alternative hardware. They want you to buy the go for the worst option. They want you to buy into the Sony and Microsoft ecosystem so they can just be handed money for supporting these stagnant consoles, right? That will never make any money. Xbox has never been profitable in its entire existence, and we're still in this weird delusional phase where nobody wants to acknowledge that Nintendo is and always has been the market leader. They are the only ones introducing new video game IPs. They are the only ones who are making money on their hardware. They are the only ones that treat their consumers like actual people, right? Like, they have the best backwards compatibility service. They have the best online play. They have the best online multiplayer. They have the best life simulators. They have the best open world fantasy action RPGs. Like, they have the best strategy RPGs. Like, the only way you would prefer other consoles over Nintendo is if you still buy into those early 90s Sega commercials. Like, oh, we do what Nintendo don't. And that's what we've been seeing over the past couple of years, is that, like, oh, Nintendo does this, right? Like, they don't have the AAA games. Well, what AAA games are you looking forward to? Right? Like, what games are you going to play in 2024 that are bigger than Tears of the Kingdom, bigger than Super Mario Bros. Wonder? I can't think of anything that's bigger than Fire Emblem Engage, right? Like, it is shocking to me how many people are, like, in denial about this, right? Who are in denial about the current state of Nintendo and how they're poised to become the next Disney. I've heard people talk about this, how Nintendo has kind of replaced Disney for them as their go-to family brand. And it's not hard to see why, because the games are better. They have more variety. They have more options. They appeal to all kinds of different people. Like, they're simply better than what the competition is. And in this year, 2023, I think this era has started with Witcher. This era started in 2015 with The Witcher 3. Like, the trend, unfortunately, has been to rely on, like, licensed products, right? That's been the issue for the past decade, is that, like, oh, The Witcher, it's a fantasy book series, so we're gonna make a video game about it, and it's gonna be great because it was based on a real fantasy series. Oh, we're gonna make a Lord of the Rings game. It's gonna have a rival faction system, and we're gonna trademark it so nobody else can use it. We're gonna make a D&D game, and we're going to pay a bunch of bots to play the game on Steam so it makes it look like it's super popular. And we're going to pay Jeff Keighley to give it the Game of the Year award. You know, Dungeons and Dragons, man. Like, Spider-Man 2, oh man, Guardians of the Galaxy, oh man, Wolverine, oh, I don't care that I had to wait for 5 years. It's Wolverine. I don't know any other video game characters that can do what he does. Like, oh man, I don't recognize any real video game characters because I don't play any actual video games. Like, that is the issue when it comes to the general audience, right? The people that just blindly lap up whatever Sony and Microsoft's third parties just throw in front of them, right? They don't care that Spider-Man 2 has an asinine story. They don't care that it shits all over the lore. They don't care that it's not even as good as Batman Arkham's Asylum, which in itself was a mediocre game. Like, they don't care that the games are getting worse. They don't care that the creators are just not putting out good content. As long as they can lap up every single game that comes out on their non-Nintendo hardware, they're perfectly happy. They're perfectly content to pretend that what Nintendo is doing doesn't matter, right? They are perfectly content in just pretending as if their games are the best just because they are, just because they're on their platform of choice. They have no comprehension, no idea, no understanding of what being a gamer is all about. They have no idea just how superior Nintendo and their partners are when it comes to delivering high quality gaming experiences on the best gaming platform in existence, the Nintendo Switch. And this year, we are going to see this over and over and over and over again. And much like 2023, much like 2022, much like 2021, much like 2020, we are going to see these people in denial about it. Nobody will want to admit it's true. They're going to bend over backwards. They're going to make excuses. They're going to prop up some random game that they say is the best ever made, probably Grand Theft Auto 6, while every great Nintendo game that's better than it, which is all of them, will get downplayed and ignored. 2024 is going to be a great year for Nintendo, and I cannot wait to see it play out.